Millions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
There's something wrong. There's something wrong. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it's there. Like a splinter, driving you mad.
Bring the ship up to broadcast depth. We're going in. Taking Neo to see her.
See who? The Oracle.
Welcome aboard, everybody. We're happy you could join us for another episode of what we hope will be a mind-altering, mind-expanding discussion. I'm James Sangster, the founder of Houston Ghost Research. HGR is a spiritual crisis intervention and paranormal investigation group here in the Houston area. I'm also the author of Help, I'm Haunted, Dealing with Ghosts, available on Amazon Kindle. As usual, we're joined by our co-host and partner in crime, Keith Davis, a fellow intellectual and seeker of truth. Our special guest for this show is Don Miguel. He's a shaman and entheogenic expert. He has extensive experience with the use of ayahuasca and psychoactive mushrooms to explore inner space. His web blog is available at http://abzu2.wordpress.com. I'd like to open the discussion this evening, or open the show with one of my favorite quotes, which I think is applicable to a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight. The quote is from Ramona L. Anderson. People spend a lifetime searching for happiness, looking for peace. They chase idle dreams, addictions, religions, and even other people, hoping to fill the emptiness that plagues them. The irony is, the only place they ever needed to search was within.
Just to give you a background, I mean, I was looking at what you sent me on my email, and I'm 67 now, and I've been involved in these things probably for about 45 years, more or less. And it took me like about 20 years to finally realize exactly what was going on. I mean, I think like most people. And so it took about 20 years for me to start realizing what was going on. And I have like a very, very different perspective on what I like to call entheogens in particular than I had the first time I ever had an experience, which is when I used to live in San Francisco. And I believe the first time I ever had contact with what some people call alternate reality is acid trip with some friends at a Mamas and Papas concert.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was.
Typical experience for the time period, from what I've been told, anyway.
Difficult in what respect?
No, typical.
Oh, typical. Yes, absolutely, yes. And so I lived in San Francisco during its days of glory with Fillmore Auditorium, having really, like the top music groups of that period. So that was like sort of my initiation into the whole thing. But I believe what really changed my whole view when I started becoming quote unquote serious about it is when I started participating with the Santo Daime group with ayahuasca. And they have a ritual which I find extremely well structured. There's a lot of elements about the ritual of the men on one side, the women on the other side, this little two-step to the right, two-step to the left, constant centering, hundreds and hundreds of songs, each one different. The music, the rattles, the whole thing. It's a first-class shamanic ritual, and if no one has ever done it, I really strongly recommend them amongst all the organizations out there. They have one element which I'm not too wild about, but I respect, and it's that the Santo Daime group is actually a church. It's an organization, and in Brazil, there's many groups that have taken ayahuasca on as like part of their ritual. Another one is União de Vegetal, which is also interesting. But the Santo Daime group has this strange mixture of Catholicism and saints, along with, other elements that probably come from African cultures and local traditions. That it's a strange brew. It's strange, but I participated with them for many years, and I really enjoyed the contact. But I have a very sensitive digestive system, and ayahuasca is like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience, but it's really
that's something I wanted to kind of back up just a little bit so the listeners will understand.
Please stop me whenever you want. Okay.
No, I want to continue right where you left off, but there's two things I want to make clear. What year did you say this was going on initially? Your first experience with this?
With ayahuasca?
Yes.
I think it was about over 15 years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow. The other thing, you started off saying that you were very interested in entheogens. And could you just kind of give a very brief definition of what entheogens encompass? And then please continue with where you were going with that story.
Okay. Yeah. The entheogens are basically psychoactive substances that are used in religious or shamanic rituals and have some type of a spiritual context. In other words, it's how you use these psychoactive substances that convert it into an entheogen. And there's a interesting detail that is important for people to understand, and is that there's something that's called endogenous entheogens. And endogenous means that it's found in your body. And DMT, which is the main psychoactive substance of ayahuasca.
Right.
Dimethyltryptamine, right?
Dimethyltryptamine. I'll just speak like if nobody knows what I'm anything about I'm talking about, because there's different kinds of people. But
you're talking about the MAO inhibitor plant-containing plant, and then the other plant that actually has the DMT in it, right?
Right. It's DMT is a combination of two things. One is the Psychotropes, which is a shrub. It's leaves that contain the DMT, and there's many grasses and shrubs that contain DMT in nature. And then the other one is the Panspermia capi, which is a woody vine that gets cut into pieces and pounded into this pulp, and it's mixed together with the leaves of that contain the DMT, and this brew is made. But
was that a Portuguese name?
The Santo Daime or the ayahuasca?
The one that contains the MAO inhibitor.
The Panspermia capi. No, this is Latin. It's
Latin.
Latin. It's a Latin name for that woody vine. There's different names for it. Each throughout South America, there's different ways of preparing the ayahuasca, and they call it different names, like yague or whatever, depending if you're in Colombia or Peru or in Brazil. And also the DMT containing plant can be different. The Santo Daime group in particular used Psychotropes, and this is what's beautiful about their preparation is like the enormous amount of care they take into getting the plants, the ritual. I've been in Brazil, and I've participated in the rituals with the preparation of the ayahuasca. And when you go, the first thing they do is give you like a glass of ayahuasca, and you start singing these songs, and there's people around cleaning each leaf, adding it to these bowls. That then there's people who are in charge of the fire. There's a great deal of discipline and organization, and a a lot of intent in what they're doing, and it's not just going out in the bush and getting some things and making a tea out of it and drinking it. There's a lot of intention, and there's a lot of energy that is being put into it. And they have special preparations during like full moon, certain festivals, the people involved in it. This is all part of the magic potion, and the ayahuasca that you get where it's made and it's fresh is like quite different than what you can get in other places. Well, once it's traveled and it's like fermented a bit, it can really be god awful. I mean,
I would imagine.
It's like you can't. it's like something that there's rituals that go on for like 3 days. Like they're like extensive ceremonies, and like you get to the point where like sometimes just smelling it, it's in the air, is like enough to like trigger off like a vomiting fit. And this is basically the thing that I don't. I've done this so many times that every time I would come home from one of these rituals, I would tell my wife, it's the last time. This is it. And she would laugh, and she said, yeah, I've heard that already a million times. And
I'm sure.
And so sure enough, another shaman, I started only going to really important ceremonies where like important people would like get together, like not just any ritual, but like people who come from Brazil, who come with an entourage of like fantastic musicians and singers, and like people who have been doing this since they were born. I mean, there's a lot of people I've met that they have a tradition within. This started in the 30s, by the way, the Santo Daime group. They have a tradition. Some people that when a baby is born, the first thing to do is give it a drop of ayahuasca.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Well,
interesting. Well, our body does create a certain amount of
as a contact. Yeah. Well, I've been in many rituals where women who have been in advanced stages of pregnancies have been participating, taking the ayahuasca with the babies. And when they're born, a lot of them, the first thing they do is just give it a drop of ayahuasca. And I've met some of these children, and they're very, very beautiful people. They're very nice, very sweet.
You got to see them grow up and see later on that it didn't have any negative effects. If anything, it had a positive effect.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I have a very good friend of mine who's a well-known psychiatrist in Spain, and he has a clinic in Brazil where he works with ayahuasca with drug addicts, people who are really, really messed up with heroin and cocaine. And he has a very successful clinic there that the difficulty with drug addiction isn't so much eliminating the toxin from your system. It's to keep you from going back to it. What are the reasons that led you up to this?
Right. Fix the pattern that brought you into the addiction.
Can I ask you a very specific question, because I am in that exact position? And
what, drug addict?
Well, not so much that, but in a way. Now, I've been looking at ibogaine because I was told that ibogaine would reset your receptors. But here's my situation. Several years ago, probably about 10, I was put on heavy doses of hydrocodone because I have bilateral tendonitis in my arms. Well, I was on it for so long, and at the time I was on it, I didn't know it was addictive, and I was on quite a bit of it. Well, long story short, I eventually got on something called Suboxone. I am now on the lowest dose of Suboxone they give someone, which basically all it does is keep you from going into withdrawals. What I want to do is rid myself of having to take anything, and I didn't realize that taking ayahuasca would also do that. I thought I had to take ibogaine specifically for that. So you're saying I can be treated for this with ayahuasca, correct?
I'm going to get back. Keith is your name, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, Keith. Keith, I'm going to get back to you because before we end this session, we have to talk about how entheogens work as far as healing plants. They're in Spanish, it's called plantas profesoras, and planta profesoras is loosely translated as plant teachers.
Okay.
And besides teaching, they're very, very powerful healing plants. And the way they heal. I have a lot of experience with these things, and I have my viewpoint on them. But as far as my personal experience with myself and with others that have participated with me, each shaman has his way of how to work with the energy of the plant, and for me, it doesn't matter what the technique is; it's the end result that's really important.
Absolutely.
And so there's some that have a lot of rattle shaking and smoke blowing and like singing songs and dancing and all these kind of techniques that are used that have been traditional. And I've developed my own system where like there's a traditional shamanism that I think is very good for where it was developed, and it has been maintained for centuries. But there's something strange to me about getting a shaman out of the Amazon and taking him to Manhattan.
Yes, you lose your setting, right? First and foremost.
This is for me like really, really important. There's just some things that just can't be translated. It's like out of place. But okay.
Plus, he's out of place, so he probably has a different mental state because of that.
Well, and all of a sudden it's starting to become a bit of a road show and becoming very popular. And like today I'm in Tokyo, and tomorrow I'm in London, and the next day I'm in Tel Aviv type scenario, you know.
Right.
And so anyway, back to the healing. I haven't lost my track on this. On the healing aspect, what I haven't discovered, but I've realized what many have already realized, and is that there's an aspect to the healing plants that is very special, and that is, I like to say that when you take them, you are in communication with the plant.
Right, I've heard that.
And somebody who I really believe has made it publicly well known and popular is Jeremy Narby in the Cosmic Serpent. Is something that after his experience with ayahuasca ceremony, it took him quite a long time, about 10 years, before he
Did you
realized.
Say the Cosmic Serpent?
The Cosmic Serpent, yes.
Okay.
And what he realized was how people who have lived their generation after generation in a, let's say in the Amazon, in a very intimate contact with nature, how it is possible that they are able to communicate with animals and plants on a very intimate level. And it's that's their university. There's no video, there's no book, there's no written word, but there is a communication that is set up. And how is it possible that they are able to communicate? And he realized that it's through DNA. It's the DNA in the plant that sets up this communication. And DNA receives and transmits information, and it has incredible properties that are just starting to be realized. I don't think modern science really is fully aware of the importance of DNA. DNA is cosmic. It's the cosmic Wi-Fi. It's the huge botnet in the sky. And whether it's the single cell amoeba, a slime mold, a leaf, whatever that is organic, anything that is alive contains DNA.
Well, I heard that if you would go ask a shaman, how did you know that these were the right plants? And they will tell you that the plants told them.
Exactly. This is a level of knowingness. It's like nonverbal communication. When you have the experience of the ineffable, when you get into a certain vibratory stage, you are able to communicate with anything that is alive, but at a completely different level than what we're accustomed to. Like,
are we talking frequencies now?
We're talking we are all fractal aspects of one consciousness. Everything around us is alive. Everything. There is no such thing as matter as we know it. If you get an electron microscope and you start zooming into a rock, you start realizing it just starts becoming nothing but space, getting down to the atomic level. You just start going in, zooming in, and it's space. And all those particles are all vibrating. Everything is vibrating.
You're going to start
absolutely everything.
You're
and so, like,
excuse
me, and all that space is not empty.
About to open a can of worms now.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. I wasn't trying to walk on you. I just wanted to point it out. You're crossing over in subject matter a lot with Holographic Universe, and I know you and Stephen Davis are friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's absolutely right. We do live in a holographic universe, and it's something that every element of the entire universe contains the entire universe.
He was actually our first person that we did a 2-part interview with on our podcast.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So I've been making some notes here in the background.
Go ahead. Excuse me? I know it. I want to go back to the healing properties.
Sure.
Okay. And so, like, what I have developed is like a ritual in which I'm a firm believer in that there are frequencies, there are like intelligences that can come through the plant towards you, but you must allow them to. And if your mind is active and you're going blah, 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 and you're doing this and that and everything, right, you need to have silence. And I believe in the 0 point. I think that if you really want to learn from the professor, and I always make it very clear, I am not the professor. I am just the one who presents the professor. If you really want to learn from the professor, you must still your mind. It's something that you need to have the experience of going beyond mind. No mind does not mean you become unconscious. Quite on the contrary. The state of no mind is practiced with Zen meditation, Vipassana, all these disciplines of like quieting the mind. This is a state of beingness. Through the state of beingness, the frequencies that you are in communication with that plant can begin to become known to you. And there is a knowingness that comes from this, that is within the realm of the ineffable. And the healing process comes when you are really honestly and truly able to get to a state of no mind and become one with nature. When you, the ideal setting for all of this for me, which is where I always do it, is at night and in nature, in the woods, on a hilltop, in a special place that has a special power and quality to it. And when you're there and you get to the proper tuning, all the ritual is a guiding into getting into a certain frequency. It's like we're bombarded with millions of signals around us, TV signals, radio signals, all sorts of levels of communication and everything. But you need to know how to tune in to the right radio station.
Are you familiar with Joe Vitale's work and his book Zero Limits that talks a lot about what you're speaking of here?
Who did you say?
Joe Vitale. He has a book called Zero Limits. It's called The Secret Hawaiian System for Wealth, Health, Peace, and More.
The Ho'opopo?
Ho'opopo alapapi, or something of that effect. I forget exactly how it's pronounced.
I'm familiar with that Hawaiian healing technique.
Very good. Cool.
Mm-hmm. So what I have felt personally, and those who have participated with me have always felt, is that when you get to that state of melting, we have a tendency to separate ourselves from nature. We are part of nature. We're an intimate part of nature, and we have a tendency to like isolate ourselves from our environment. Where when you get into the right frequency, which is not a hallucination, I have proven so many times over and over again to people who have participated with me in these events, is that, like when we're both seeing the same thing and we can see the energies in between the trees and how the tree is glowing and the plants and how you're walking on the ground that looks like very thick velvet, that's just like the energy is just rising, but it just rises straight up into the sky, and you see this invisible landscape. You're not seeing anything that isn't there. It's there all the time. It's just that I think it's quite humbling to think that, that what we consider to be visible light is 1/10 billionth of what we consider to be the electromagnetic spectrum. And when we take something that we can see a little bit more than that, you think you're hallucinating. I mean, I feel the majority of people on this planet are totally in hallucination. I mean, like, it's clear.
I've never heard it put that way. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I posted recently. My blog is called Convergence of Parallel Worlds, and I recently posted this article about these astronomers thinking they found what they consider to be a mind-boggling large structure because it takes 10 billion years to traverse, and taking into account that light travels at 671 million miles per hour, which is more or less like 6 trillion miles per year, 10 billion years to traverse seems like a long time. But my question is, what would really be mind-boggling to me is the possibility, I'm not saying that it is, the possibility that from a non-local hyperluminal singularity of the one consciousness within the multiverse, the limitation of light traveling at about 671 million miles per hour is just mental entertainment.
When you get right down to it, you're absolutely right. It comes down to an emotion you're going to feel.
Yeah, no,
or a frequency.
Yeah, I also, there's a Greek philosopher that's not too well known called Epictetus, and he states, it is impossible for anyone to start understanding what he thinks he already knows.
Oh, that's a good perspective. Yeah.
Well, that's like their cup's full, like Bruce Lee said. Your cup's already full. You have to empty that cup.
You have to be the one of the important elements in shamanic rituals, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people fail to really discipline themselves about it, and is that you really need to be very humble. It's very important. Don't pretend that you know anything. Be humble.
One of the first.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one of the first things you start to understand as you gain wisdom and really get perspective is that the more you know, the less you truly understand. So anybody.
This is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Absolutely. So if you're going to try to walk in the shamanic world and do stuff like this, you have to understand that what you truly understand is just minuscule. You don't really understand anything. It's all a matter of scale and perspective.
I think we're all basically shamans. Really, it's just that there's some of us that have more experience than others, and experience is something that just cannot be replaced by anything else.
Well, like James said, the more I learn, the more I realize there's so much more out there to be learned. Sometimes you don't know what there is that you don't know. But I was going to ask you two specific questions. One, what is the significance in specific? And I know you know all of the different rituals that go on with these things, but what's the specific significance of the tobacco that they use to blow in the face and that situation? And plus, I was going to see, could you walk us through a typical ayahuasca ceremony and how that plays out?
Well, there's different There's different kinds of shamans depending, like, if we're talking about Colombia or Mexico or Peru or Brazil, they have different rituals. There's many elements that are common to them, but
the most of the ones I've seen, I think, were in Peru.
Yeah, there's a lot of shaman tourism going on now that one has to be very careful about it, particularly in Peru, I've heard.
Yeah.
And I think one has to really investigate, like who one is going to be involved with, because it's a dicey subject.
Oh, absolutely. We were talking about that with Hamilton. It's a very important to find out who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and also a problem I frequently have with people, which I emphasize very much on, is that like you can't. A lot of people say, "Oh, I met a friend of mine who had this great experience," and I said, "But look, it was your friend who had a great experience. I can't guarantee the same thing for you."
Yeah, good point.
Because one of the big difficulties I see with a lot of people is that you have to come into a ceremony clean. You have to come in humble. You can't come in with a bunch of preconceived ideas because I didn't hallucinate. Like, if this is the objective, is this business about hallucination is like is ridiculous. And besides, I don't believe that there is such a thing as hallucination. I've been through, incredible experiences, and I don't believe any of them have been hallucinations. I don't believe I have experienced anything that hasn't been for real. It's not.
Would you go as far as to say one should not go in there with any expectation of any specific result at all? Should they go in just with an open mind and let what happens happen?
Absolutely.
Right.
Imprescindible. I mean, it's like really, really important, because frustration, which I have had a couple times, because I'm very selective. I don't just accept anybody. There's this business of people creating these ceremonies. You pay, you participate. I'm not like that. I don't go along. There's a lot of people I do not accept because I don't think it's good for them for one reason or another. And it's something that it's very, very important to not go in with any expectations, because if you have expectations and they're not met, you end up with frustration.
And then you miss whatever valuable lesson was there.
This is exactly the most important thing. Is there's a movie going on, and if you come in there with your own movie and you start creating your own scenario, you miss out on the movie.
Absolutely.
And you haven't listened to the professor. And there's certain elements which are very, very important to keep in mind, and is that there are what are called words of power. And for me, words of power, words are much more than just words. There's energies. There's a lot more behind certain words.
Oh, absolutely. Are you familiar with Anthony Robbins' work?
No, I'm not.
He goes into very deep detail on words and how the words you use to shape your experience become your experience.
Well, the one I am very familiar with, and I practice his information, is Masaru Emoto with crystallization of water.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and this is part of my ritual. I actually change the crystalline structure of water that I prepare for drinking, and it's something that the intention that you put behind that has a tremendous effect on everything around you. And so, like, you have to have like a as clear a mind as possible, and that clear mind is like from 0 point, like no mind, just opening yourself up all the time. And the words of power that I always use is trust. It's absolutely I speak English fairly well, but imprescindible.
It's imperative. It's imperative.
Imperative. It's imperative that you trust the situation. You have to go in with this trust. If you have any resignation or any doubts or like suspicions, it's best not to participate. I don't recommend people to one thing is to be cautious and apprehensive about a situation that deals with the unknown. This is normal. But the other thing is to be fearful, and fear is very, 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 very dangerous. This is a word of power that, like you have to be very, very, very careful about fear, because it doesn't exist. It's created. But under those circumstances, with the power plants, they amplify all your thoughts. They amplify. And if you have fear, it's going to amplify the fear. And it's very important that you trust in the process and you trust the person you're with. And this is one of the words of power, is trust. And once you trust, what will really get you into the proper space is to surrender. And surrender is a very, very, very big word. Because once you have that trust and once you surrender, then the energies that are surrounding you come into play. And this is when you really make the important contact. And once you do that, and everything is focused from a heart center instead of in your head, you have to be very conscious of the most important word of power, and that is unconditional love.
I was going to say that. That's the
unconditional
opposite of fear.
love.
Opposite of fear is love. I'm curious, do you walk them through a very specific mind process, which this can be done, I know how to do it, that puts them in that state of total love? Is that part of the ritual?
That's part of the ritual, yes. It's like being focused. Instead of being focused in, I have special music and instruments that I play, and there's everything is focused into a certain direction, like it's an alignment process. And so like also part of the ritual is to like rid yourself of these energy vampires that a lot of people have, entities sucking energy from you, bacteria or whatever, but like on a multidimensional level. You're not aware of it, but there's a lot of things that are sucking energy from you, and the really good shaman, and I do try to be one, is the one who is able to empower you. He's not asking you for anything. It's you that is being empowered.
Now I see what you were talking about all the healing benefits that go along with this.
The healing comes from being in harmonic resonance with nature. It's as simple as that. I assure you. I have been able to get into these states of consciousness where I just melt into the planet, like I just really become one with everything. And there's this knowingness that, like on this planet right now, at this very moment, there are millions of people praying and doing all sorts of beautiful acts of love and healing. And no matter where they are, because we're all connected, if you're at the right vibratory level, this is going to impinge upon you at that moment in space and time, and you will feel it.
So if you're receptive to it,
you have to be receptive to it. You have to be in that, you have to quit fighting with yourself. You have to like give up your ego, give up your desires. This is what unconditional love is. Unconditional is, I want love. If you take I, which is ego, and want, which is desire, you end up with unconditional love. It's pure love. It's an energy field. And it's more than just blah, blah, blah. It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got nothing to do with desire. It's got nothing to do with ego. It's a state of being. And what I personally have found that, like this is something I contact best from a state of no mind, from just beingness. And from this comes knowingness.
Well, go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
You've said the state of no mind several times, and I'm a big believer in stepping out of the way, which is sort of usually how I refer to that. But the Japanese in martial arts circles have a word for that. They call it mushin, the state of no mind, where you just get out of the way.
one of the people that participated in one of my ceremonies was my Tai Chi teacher, who was quite reluctant at the beginning, but he's a very intuitive person. And during the process, I said to him, do your Tai Chi. And he went into this, it was beauty and movement. It was just gorgeous. And
Right.
he just went through the whole process. And when he ended, he had tears coming down his face. And he says, I can't believe it. I did it. The masters take years. I became one with the movement.
That's amazing.
He lost consciousness of his self, and he went into the forms, and he flowed through the whole thing, with absolute grace. And he just had tears at the end of the session because he couldn't believe that in one session he had obtained what his master took him 30 years to do.
Wow.
It's
Just
all
because
about
he
the
was open
tools.
and receptive. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to share an experience I had. I've already shared this with James, but I want to share it with you and just kind of get your take on it. I
Sure.
was driving from lunch one day from work, and I was driving down an area where I couldn't see the corner coming up, but I knew there was a corner coming up. And I didn't have any music on. I was in a state kind of like you're talking about, no mind. I was open. And I felt some weird energy hit me when I started up towards the corner. And as soon as I passed the corner, I see two people out of the corner of my eye doing some kind of Tai Chi. And I don't know what about it just made me pull over, and I had to walk over and talk to them. And I walked over to them, and I just started following the movements they were doing. And they walked up to me, and I had that instant feeling you're talking about of unconditional love. Did not know these people from Adam. At the end of it, I got their names and whatnot, but they were just, we were all in the same frequency and the same feeling of unconditional love. It was just amazing.
Yeah. No, it really, I recently had a session with a very sweet young guy from Iran, and he was just there, and he called me up on Skype and told me, that he just couldn't get me off his mind, and that he had this guy that was near his house sitting on the corner. He wasn't begging or anything, but he just really was sad. And so he just went up to this person, didn't know him at all, and just went up to him and says, can I help you? And the guy says, no, I don't want anything. But he saw that, he really needed some kind of attention or anything. And he said, well, let me just give you a big hug. And he goes up to the guy and he hugs him. And the man starts to cry and he says, I've never had anybody do that to me.
Sometimes that's all it takes is just a little compassion.
And it's compassion, it's love. I think it's really the most important thing in our lives is just forget about all this madness that's going on, and just try to be focused on yourself and be a loving person, and help whoever you can, and smile and tell a joke or something instead of being so serious all the time. It's just
right.
Well, do you ever find that you're told to do things for certain people? Like I was in a drive-thru once, and something just told me to give this lady a $10 tip, and I did, and she started crying when I did. And I never knew what it was about, but I just knew I was supposed to do it, so I did.
Yeah, well, you're talking about what I've been talking about, knowingness. Where you get to a certain state that you just feel right about doing certain things. You don't have to go through any analytical mental process of blah, 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 why anything, just
I totally didn't question it.
Intuition, pay attention to yourself, and it's very important, the attention to details. We take so many things for granted. I mean, something I like to always point out is I don't know about you guys, but the fact that we're talking together at this moment through what's called cyberspace in a planet that is one of billions throughout the universe, and the billions and billions and quadrillions of planets and universes that are out there, and that we're right here now doing what we're doing, I consider that to be a miracle.
I agree. Even
Absolutely.
thinking of a computer, if you look at the micro resistors that are in them, if one of those just tilts slightly or cracks slightly, I'm amazed computers work at all. And because that's what I do for a living is fix computers, and every day I'm just amazed.
So do I. I'm a computer doctor.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, I do IT desktop support and a little bit of networking at work. So.
I computers is one of my other passions. I mean, I love everything about them. I love how they're put together, like the nitty gritty details of microprocessors and operating systems and everything. The whole logic behind it, I just think is absolutely fascinating.
I think we're all three in agreement on that one.
Yeah, the precision and harmony that it takes to make a logical system like a computer work is it's reminiscent of how the universe is put together.
Yeah, I had a problem with a telephone company the other day trying to solve a problem for a neighbor, and they had this absurd situation, and she says, "This system tells me you don't have internet available there." And I said, "Excuse me, the next door neighbor has internet available, so obviously there's internet available." "Yes, but the system doesn't show that it's available." And I said, "The system's perfect. It's the idiot behind the keyboard."
Yeah, we call that OE at work all the time, operator error.
Too funny. So in listening to you, Miguel, you really strike me, a lot of the words you use and the key phrases remind me a lot of Carlos Castaneda and his work.
My God, that's something I read, 40 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an oldie goldie, that one.
So was he influential?
I don't know how much is true of Carlos Castaneda. I think it's a great yarn. It's a good story, and I think it was very important that it became popular with a lot of people, because it introduced a lot of people to concepts that they had never really thought about. So I think from that concept, I think Carlos Castaneda was definitely influential in a lot of people.
I think the main problem some people had with him is that the way he passed off his work. Had he passed it off as what it actually is, it might have got a lot better fanfare.
Yeah, I don't know. There was always something funny about it that, like I said, it's good reading.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way. I've done a lot of the research as to whether it was historical fact or not, and it really definitely looks like it was not historical fact. It looks like the vast majority of it was fiction, but at the end of the day, it still introduces you to those concepts, like you said.
I think anything that does that is good. I'm amazed at the kind of people interested in shamanic experiences these days, because like I'm approached a lot of times by people who are professionals, businessmen, like what you would call really straight people, and they, of course, are curious, but they don't want to do anything stupid by buying something from some street vendor, not knowing what they're getting into or how much it take or how. So I mean, they're making intelligent choices, and they're like participating in different shamanic rituals of different kinds. The ayahuasca business has become quite popular now. There's a lot of shamans traveling around introducing people to the experience, which I think is good. But I've been in many times in groups like with over 100 people in a ceremony.
That's a bit much for a ceremony, wouldn't you say?
Well, this is it. With a couple of exceptions where I have been in very tight ceremonies where the people participating have been people involved, very experienced, like for many years, and are really into it. On those occasions, I have gotten to the point where, like, at the end of the session, it looked like we were just all ready to float off the planet. Like everybody's face was just luminous, and like there was this, like, the air changed in the room. There was a luminosity to everything that had nothing to do with the effects of the ayahuasca. It was just the tremendous feeling of love that had been generated from that center.
So everybody was building off each other and creating an actual stronger, whatever you want to call it, frequency, stronger vibration.
This is their basic concept, is that when they have a lot of these people participating in these ceremonies, is that no matter how flipped out you are, and I've seen some pretty flipped out people in these ceremonies, is that they have great belief in the strength of their ritual, and they maintain the singing and maintain the song. Nothing stops, keeps going.
I see.
Can do the freak out you want, but they don't stop for you, and it just keeps on going, believing that this is going to heal you no matter what. And when you get into a large group of people, like over 100 people, there's so many energy levels going on. There's so many stories going on that, for me, because I'm very sensitive to these things,
it becomes chaotic.
Not chaotic, but it's a disturbance, because I'm there for my participation in the story. But there's too many distractions on an energetic level, and I like to keep it tight. Like, I rarely do I ever work more than with 6 people. I'm usually like with 1, 2 people, 3 people is like what I like to do best. But 6 max, but never 100.
I see what you're saying there. Yeah, that seems like it'd be more valuable.
Intimate. It's more intimate, and and there's people that I would have in one group that I would never have in another group, for example. Because
so you're very selective about who you put together. Then
I'm very selective because I work with the harmonic resonance, and it's something that like we have to all be within a certain wavelength and a certain level of experience, and I find that working on that level, it's tight. It's like you're able to get better results, because I don't like to waste my time, and
I don't blame you.
I think it has to be taken seriously. There's always like a preparation involved of fasting, and preferably like 2 days in advance, and getting yourself ready for it. It's not just something you're going to go.
Yeah, doing a physical cleanse, I'm sure would be excellent during that time too. Right before.
I usually do that. Because it's something you have to be preparing yourself physically and mentally. And
absolutely.
There's actually brain chemistry involved, where like there's certain foods and certain things that you can take that help you. And
well, let me ask you. I got to ask you. Whenever you do have these groups, is this something you conduct in Peru? You may have answered this earlier. I apologize if I missed that. But where do you conduct these at?
Well, I conduct them in a special place that I believe has telluric properties, because are you at all familiar with geomancy and ley lines and things like that?
I'm familiar with ley lines, but not geomancy.
Okay, geomancy is the study of ley lines and earth energies, and so like
I know very little about them, but I have heard of them.
Well, there's in the American Indian tradition, all these things about like power spots and like sacred spots are places
Absolutely.
that have something special about them, and conducting ceremony in those places, I think, is really, really potent, and that's something I notice all the time in people who have participated the first time. Also notice very much the telluric energies that are involved, that are the part that like increase the contact, let's say, because there's a lot of fine tuning going. It's a delicate subject. There's a lot of fine tuning that's involved, and it all has to go click, click, click. It's a little bit like putting a computer together or something like that. You have to get all the right elements together for it to like really work.
Right. Hey, I don't mean to keep cutting you off here, but I have a couple specific questions, and I didn't know how much time you had. I didn't know if you had more than an hour, or if you needed to go right at the hour.
No. I'm with you guys until you're ready to drop. I mean, you're like, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Let me go ahead and ask.
Time is no problem. So like, please.
Awesome. That's great, man. One quick question. Do you do any ibogaine ceremonies, or you strictly do ayahuasca only?
No, I've tried just about everything on this planet, but I haven't had that experience. And I have my reservations about it, but I have a friend from Africa that keeps promising me that he knows somebody that works with that, and next time he comes to where I live, he's going to get me in contact with him. It's an interesting thing. What I think is the most amazing psychoactive substance on the planet, without question, is the Bufo alvarius.
Wow. Okay, I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of the toad, the Sonoran toad? You're in Texas, I believe. You're not far from it.
Oh, okay. I've just never heard it referred to by that name. Yeah.
It contains 5-MeO-DMT, which is like different than the other DMTs. It's much more powerful, and this is an experience that the first time I heard about this American, that I don't know exactly where he is, if he's in New Mexico or where, but he was like the priest of the toad, and it's all mentioned in the Church of the Toad of Light by Albert Most, who wrote a book on it called The Psychedelic Toad of the Sonoran Desert. But anyway, there's a doctor in Mexico that a friend of mine has been with called Octavio Rettig, and he's dealt with thousands of people. It's like absolutely mind-blowing. And this toad, which is quite interesting because it's underground all the time, and you only see it whenever it rains. And evidently it rains just a few days out of the year in the Sonora Desert. And when it rains, it comes out to mate, and then it disappears again. But during that period of time, which is brief, you can capture them. They're very friendly, evidently, and they're a bit unsightly. They have these glands by their mouth and on their feet that when you milk them, by exciting them, they excrete this toxin that is unbelievably powerful. Their only enemy evidently seems to be the coyote. But if a coyote should be stupid enough to bite one of these toads, he dies immediately. And like after you've had the experience, you understand perfectly fine why. And so it's quite an adventure. A friend of mine who got together with a Mexican, and they had a whole expedition waiting for it to rain, and they had to get these Land Rovers over into this desert that's just rock, totally destroys the cars, and started finding these frogs to milk them. And it dries into these little flakes that look like mica, like little thin mica.
Right.
Mica. I don't know what your concept of weights is, but do you know what 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams is? Yeah,
that fairly minuscule.
It's like the tip of your fingernail type of thing, but
absolutely,
just the part that it's like an extremely small amount. Well, like a heavy dosage is considered to be about 20 milligrams of this stuff, and
very potent stuff, though.
Are you familiar with Stanislav Grof, the founder of transpersonal psychology?
No.
Okay, Stanislav Grof is a very famous psychiatrist and created a school called transpersonal psychology, and he wrote a book, When the Impossible Happens. And of all the stories I have heard about this toad, I think his description of his experience is the one that I would concur with in it. And he said, I became consciousness facing the absolute. It's as brief as that. But unless you've gone through the experience, you don't know really what the hell this guy's talking about. But anyway, you get this extremely small amount, and you have to smoke it in a special pipe, like a bulb, that it ignites rapidly. You need a strong heat. And when it ignites, you have to inhale the smoke and hold it as long as you possibly can. And like within about 3 seconds, more or less, I mean, I may even be exaggerating, like about 2-3 seconds. If you really have your wits about you, you might be able to get a second toke from the pipe, but within about 3 seconds, I've never gone through the experience, but if you were on a space capsule that was taking off, from NASA, I think the best description is it's that ride, but accelerated like 10,000 times faster.
Wow.
Like within an instant. Like it's what is mind-boggling is how instant the experience is. You just lose consciousness of your body and time. I mean, you're like completely blown out of your body. You're like in a space that it's what Stanislav Grof explained. I became consciousness facing the absolute. You're just pure conscious.
So you're ripped out of your ego, basically.
Your ego, your body, time, planet, the whole thing has disappeared. But you're totally conscious. You're not in any kind of fog or slumber or unconscious. No. You're super, super conscious.
Super clarity is, it's what it sounds like.
A super clarity, but like you really, really feel like at one with the universe. Not even at one with the planet, but at one with the universe. You're just pure consciousness. It's the closest experience yet you can have to a near-death experience and still come out alive, as far as I'm concerned. I really feel strongly this is probably the experience people have during the death process, which is just like a transition into a different state of consciousness. I don't believe in death, really. I think it's we're eternal. We're all part of a much bigger reality that we have any idea of. But when this can last, DMT, if you smoke DMT, like it can last like about 5-10 minutes or something like this. But the Bufo Alvarius, it's something that, depending on the dosage, can last like 30 minutes or more.
Wow. Yeah,
it's like quite intense. And when I was young, I was one of the things that I did was skydiving, and it reminded me very much of the rush when you're jumping out of the plane and the motor and the noise and the wind going through your helmet and everything, and that whole rush that you have of like falling to the planet, with this little silk parachute on your back. And all of a sudden, after pulling the parachute, you go poof, and you have this immediate quietness starts to come down, and like you're just floating gently down to earth. And that's, for me, very much the experience with the toad, Sonoran toad. It's this kind of experience of like an incredible acceleration of consciousness, and then gently coming back into your body. And what's absolutely mind-boggling is this Octavio, who he's doing this on a regular basis. He's gone to Canada, and I believe he's been in Oregon. He travels around, actually, this guy, doing this. He smokes it himself as he does it with people, and out of, my friend estimates that it's somewhere between 2,000-3,000 people that he has dealt with. Nobody has ever had a bad experience or freaked out. And I think the reason for it is that you don't have time.
Right. Yeah, you're just strapped to the rocket ship and it's going.
You don't have time.
I don't mean to cut in. I just missed something. James was telling me you were talking about a frog. I have this book somewhere. I forget the name of it, but it's about this guy who goes on the search for the frog that has the DMT that comes out of its venom sacs.
Right.
And
well, that's it.
Okay, what is the name of that book?
There's a new book out that I recommend as far as that subject is called Tryptamine Palace.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, excellent book. Yeah,
I haven't finished it yet. I was just going to ask about it. Okay, great.
Yeah, James Orrick, he has a great website, by the way, called dmtsite.com.
DMTsite.com. Awesome.
Yeah, it's all together. DMT site, all one word, .com.
So what you were describing there really does sound like a very intense version of the classic DMT trip, just put on steroids from the sound of it.
Yeah. You know, no, I've had normal. I have a thing about synthetic synthetic substances.
Yeah.
No, there's a certain quality about synthetic DMT and natural DMT. Now, the DMT and the ayahuasca, the combination with the woody vine, which is contains very heavy alkaloids, this produces an effect that's called a MAO inhibitor, and the history of ayahuasca is actually very fascinating. It's something that who knows how, out of the millions and millions and millions of plants that are in the Amazon, anybody came up with the combination of these two plants and made a tea out of it.
All right.
And, you know, and this is something that the earliest known references to it is by Spanish chroniclers that talked about it in the being used in the 16th century by priests that they considered to be like demonic worshippers, you know, because of this.
Well, just to be clear, what you said a minute ago, what you were saying is you want to get a natural source of DMT versus something made in a lab, correct?
Yeah. For me, there's a qualitative difference that is very clear, and that's the same thing. The LSD is very interesting, but it's also a synthetic product from a laboratory, but it is made from a mold. The lysergic acid is from a mold, so it is natural, but it's a laboratory thing. It's completely. I work mostly with mushrooms. Psilocybin mushrooms for me are like the sweetest substance on the planet. I have a great affinity towards them, and ayahuasca is something that I've decided now that after such a long time and gut-wrenching experiences, I've learned what I need to learn from it, and my resonance is with the mushroom.
Well, I have something really specific I want to ask you on mushrooms. I don't know if you want to delve into that topic just yet, but
whenever you want, you interrupt.
We can get back to what
you
were saying. No, we can get back to what you were saying first, though. But I'd like to come back to the mushrooms just to let you know at some point.
Yeah, I actually want to run something past you that was. I'm not quite sure where I picked it up. It may have been an article somewhere on ayahuasca and DMT. But in the article I read, or maybe it was I think it was one of Hamilton Morris's stories, actually. He was talking to one of the shamans about ayahuasca. And the shaman told him that the DMT is they didn't call it DMT, but the psychoactive ingredient DMT is locked up in these plants. And the plants actually told him what the companion herb was to make ayahuasca to unlock.
I totally believe that. Totally believe it. Absolutely. This is what we were talking about initially, that, you know, there's this knowingness, this communication by people who have for centuries, you know, genetically, you know, they have a very intimate relationship with their environment, which they do not feel separate from. They are part of, and there's a non-verbal communication set up between their environment, which is the plants and the animals and everything around them. Absolutely. I believe that totally.
So yeah, if you look at the math in that equation, you've got DMT that's locked up in a chemical form that's not available to us. And they happen to find this one plant that they
can I stop you there for a second, because you've made because it's DMT is produced in the brain by the pineal gland. And this is an interesting subject because the funny thing about that is that according to the law, DMT is illegal as any material, compound, mixture, or preparation containing DMT, which evidently must include us as well.
Right. Yeah,
It exists in
Well,
the brain.
there's certain grasses out in my backyard likely that contain DMT. Am I not correct?
There's I know of 50 in particular, but I think there's probably 100 different types of grasses. They're like marsh grasses. They're all
Right.
there's many, and as far as alkaloids are concerned, there's many plants that can be used as alkaloids that you can combine together, because in order to get an ayahuasca-like effect, what you need is a DMT-bearing plant and an alkaloid brewed together, and that's what causes the MAO inhibitor to kick in. And like, instead of a 5-10 minute journey, like it's hours long, is basically what the difference is.
Well, that's exactly why they tell some people that are on certain medications, do not take this with an MAO inhibitor, because whatever they're taking contains DMT.
Yes. Well, MAO inhibitors, you have to be very careful with medication. I mean, what you were telling me at the beginning about what you're taking and everything, for me, that's what I call drugs.
Right, absolutely.
Oh, I don't disagree with you at all. I really don't disagree with you at all.
These are drugs which I really think are harmful. I mean, the
I agree.
allopathic
That's why I want to get off
medicine and the pharmaceutical industry, I assure you, do not have your best interest in mind. And
no, they want me on this for the rest of my life, and I want to get off of it as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, I can understand. But there is a healing power behind these plants, which is real. But I mean, it requires more than just taking a pill. It involves your participation, your intention. It's something that you need to be within a certain alignment. And
I completely understand that and get that. And and James can tell you, we've done countless hours of talks and on this exact topic, and we do exercises and things like that to try to get ourselves centered and in the right place and right state of mind every day.
Have you guys ever participated in any of the ceremonies of the Native American Church? Since you're in Texas, you can have access to that kind of experience.
I have access to that, but I have not ever participated. I don't know about James.
Yeah, I've participated in a couple of ceremonies. I'm actually intimately familiar with a lot of the Native American spirituality that lies very much on the same path that I'm on. Their belief systems are just elegant and beautiful.
Yeah. No, I mentioned that because peyote is one of my favorite ones as well. I mean, peyote is it's peyote and San Pedro, which both have mescaline, which is the psychoactive substance. But
I've been studying that a bit. That's something I want to take at some point, but I don't feel it's right for me yet.
Yeah, you have to have a certain affinity. There's people who resonate better with certain plants and than others, and what I have found is of all the substances, the psilocybin mushrooms are the most gentle of them all. There, I've never had any scenario of like nausea or diarrhea or all these kind of scenarios that you get from these other plants.
Right.
Mind you, I know people who have participated for many, many years with ayahuasca, and they've never had any kind of nausea problem, because they have a body and an affinity to the plant that others don't. Pure and simple.
Right. So you don't necessarily have to purge with ayahuasca. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's many people who don't.
Oh wow, I did not know that. I thought that was part of the mandatory process.
Well, they justify it as, well, it's a cleansing of the body, in which it's most definitely is.
Yeah, well, by definition, it would be.
No, and after you've purged, like it's Gloria Excelsis. I mean, like it's nirvana. You feel absolutely great and you feel good and everything. But there's many types of ayahuasca. There's one that is very rare, difficult to get a hold of. I've only had 2 occasions that I've had access to that through contacts, and that is one that's called miel. It's honey, because the brew can be brewed for different lengths of time, and there's one that is brewed down to a point where instead of tasting bitter and like gut wrenching, it actually tastes a little bit like strange honey. It has the consistency of thick honey.
Well, I
It's
love
not liquid.
honey.
It's not liquid, and that is like super, super potent stuff. You have to really know what the hell you're doing when you take that, but it's like
Oh, I would imagine.
very gentle, that's as potent as it is. It's the one that really doesn't turn my intestines inside out, which I think is mainly because of the liquid of the tea that I have this reaction. I have a sensitive intestinal system. I mean, and I've endured more ceremonies than I care to remember.
Well, you brought up mushrooms a couple of times, and I was in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and
Good old
they've outlawed.
Amsterdam.
Yeah, they've outlawed the magic mushrooms there. But what I didn't know, and had I known at the time, I might have investigated it, is they do have something called the psychedelic truffles, which, from what I understand, are almost the same thing because they grow inside the ground. Could you elaborate on that, maybe?
Yeah, no, the truffles. Okay, yeah, I can. I know the subject very well. The truffles are psilocybin bearing because are you familiar with the life cycle of a mushroom? It's probably best that I elaborate that a bit.
Well, I did watch a documentary on the subject of mushrooms and how regular mushrooms grow versus how they get these truffles to grow. And I understand that instead of the growing upwards and out, they grow downwards and make like a root system in the ground because of a different humidity level or something to that effect.
Exactly. It all starts with the spores. And before we leave this subject, I have to tell you, well, I'd like to inform you about Terence McKenna's theory of panspermia and psilocybin mushrooms, because it's an extremely interesting subject. Okay, so it starts with the spores, which are microscopic. They're very, very tiny. And these go into the ground. And some people used to think that psilocybin mushrooms are in cow dung, because in a lot of fields they would see these psilocybin mushrooms coming out of the cow dung. And it's not true. It's in the soil. What happens is the cow dung provides just the right moisture, nutrients, and heat for the mushrooms to come forth. But so
the cows were eating the mushrooms.
They don't eat the mushrooms. This is one of the fallacies. They're not eating mushrooms and shit out the mushrooms. No, the spores are in the soil.
Oh, okay. I follow.
Okay, and the cow dung falls on top of it, and the mushrooms come up because it's got the right nutrients and moisture and everything. But it's not.
I see. That
it came out of the cow.
Gotcha.
Okay. So anyway, the spores start to create what are called mycelium. Mycelium is like it's like cotton. It's like these fibers that start to spread throughout the ground, and the fruiting body of the mycelium is the mushroom. And the mushroom pops out of the mycelium. The cap opens up, spores come back down, and the cycle repeats itself. But in certain conditions, not all psilocybin mushrooms produce the truffles. There's certain species that, if the conditions aren't right for the fruiting body to come above ground, the mycelium starts to clump together underneath the ground, forming these nodules, which are called truffles. But these nodules contain psilocybin. That's very condensed, because the psilocybin already is contained during the formative stage of the mushroom. The problem that I find with truffles. I used to use them, but I don't use them anymore because I don't find them reliable as far as dosage is concerned. They vary very much as far as potency is concerned, despite the fact that they may...
I'm sorry. Would you say in general they're more potent than the mushrooms themselves?
No,
I understand you're saying they're considerably less. Okay,
yeah,
but they're all over the place.
You have to take a lot more, and because of the high moisture content, you have to have them fresh. You can't keep them. Whereas with the normal mushrooms, you dry them under the proper conditions, and then you can vacuum pack them and put them in the fridge, and they can last for months. You can put them into honey. Some people melt them into chocolate. There's whatever it is that you can do to eliminate the oxidization of the psilocybin. You will keep its potency.
The only part I don't like about what you said is probably the part you don't like is that the dosage, it can be inconsistent.
It can be very inconsistent. I've had problems with this. It's a problem for me in particular because I'm very particular about dosage for different people, depending on the situation. I think you have to be very careful with dosage. This is a problem.
I couldn't agree more.
A lot of young kids who don't know what they're doing, I met a kid the other day. He says, "Oh, I took 10 grams of these mushrooms." I said, 10 grams? Good God. I'm a pretty experienced guy. I consider 7 already to be, depending on the species. There's different species have different qualities, like the spores can be obtained from all over the world. I'm familiar with mushrooms from Thailand, from Ecuador, from Cambodia, Mexico are my favorite. There's different species in Mexico too that each have different qualities. So it all depends on what kind of work you want to do with them.
Well, let's just assume that they're in a place where they can obtain these and have access to them. Where would you suggest they start in the mushroom family, from a small level to graduate to a higher level? Explain the different effects and your thoughts on them.
On the internet you'll find everything, and there is one site that has a mushroom dosage calculator. You put in the species of mushroom and you determine if it's dry or fresh. The difference between dry and fresh is basically that if they're fresh, I don't particularly like them fresh because dry they lose 90% of their weight in water. So out of 100 grams, you would get maybe 9 grams dried, right?
Right. Well, like getting cannabis that hadn't been dried yet. It'd weigh a lot more than the dried out cannabis.
Exactly, and also the fresh mushrooms, they have a chemical in them that can cause some type of gastric disturbance. You can feel a little bit ill at ease if you have too much of the because you have to take such a large amount,
right?
And so let's see, more or less, if I'm taking 5 grams of dried mushroom, which is considered depending on the species is considered as a strong dose. But 6 or 7 is a very strong dose. Okay, that's only for experienced people. But 5 grams of dried, that would be 50 grams of fresh. That's a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a huge difference. Yeah.
That's a mushroom salad.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also, you would have to take less. Actually, but I'm just saying as far as weight is concerned, you would have to take a lot less because they're more potent when they're fresh than when they're dry. So
now, are we talking psilocybin pubescence or
yes, because when I'm talking about magic mushrooms, I'm talking about the psilocybin mushrooms, because there are other types, but the psilocybin is a psychoactive substance that is an entheogen. That talking about that, I need to mention the superb work of Graham Hancock. Are you familiar with him? You must.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Graham Hancock has a superb book called Supernatural.
Yep.
And are you familiar with the book?
Yeah, I actually read it years and years ago. One of my favorite quotes, which I can't pull off the top of my head, is from that book about all life being from the same crucible.
Exactly. Well, he did a superb job in which he did a wonderful analysis of cave paintings for the past 40,000 years, and you have to really think about that number, and how how so many of the symbols throughout all those years in different parts of the world, because there's cave paintings all over the planet, that how is it possible that there were so many similarity between these different stick figures and things that would like appear throughout the world? You know, this was something that was really fascinating, and this all got put together in a different perspective when they discovered that there were these bushmen called the Sand Bushmen in South Africa, that an amazing bit of history there is that the South African government had actually issued hunting permits for these bushmen up to 1927, basically wiping them out. But before they finally got wiped out in these crazy...
To hunt the bushmen?
To hunt bushmen. You could actually get a permit.
So we're talking genocide here.
Absolutely. But the incredible thing about them is that these anthropologists, this tribe had no written language, and they had, I believe, one of these clicking languages, very difficult. But this husband and wife team, I believe it was, that was investigating them, they discovered that they were still producing cave paintings with symbols that were very similar to those 40,000 years ago. And we're talking about up till the end of the 19th century, beginning 20th century, okay?
They killed people with priceless information.
And so, like, it turns out that they finally were able to communicate with them and found out that it was the shamans of the tribe who were doing these paintings. And this is what Hancock points out. That is that, you know, like a lot of these cave paintings are in very deep recesses of these caves with no light, and how they were able to make these paintings, like just seeing the vibrations of the rocks, you know, like in doing these shamanic rituals where they started doing these paintings is something that I think is just absolutely mind-blowing. It's very, very interesting.
Wow.
Can I talk to you about panspermia?
Yeah, please. Actually, I was going to go there at some point. I just wasn't quite sure when we were going to segment into it. So, can you give us...
Well, it all converges to a single point.
So start from the beginning of that concept.
Panspermia is a theory that was made popular by Terence McKenna. He's not the one who came up with it, but panspermia is the theory in which a good deal, if not all, of life on this planet is of extraterrestrial origin that has come to us through meteorites, through millions of years of evolution. And the interesting thing about the psilocybin mushrooms, which is a very, very interesting possibility, is that these spores are very small, but they have a very special characteristic, and is that they're very, very hard, and they can withstand very high temperatures and very low temperatures. In other words, they could survive perfectly fine in deep space and perfectly fine entering the atmosphere of the planet. So they eventually spread throughout the planet through millions of years of evolution. And this is, according to Terence McKenna, the reason why so many people have this sort of ET quality with the mushroom journeys, that, there's this sort of like extraterrestrial presence. But now my personal experience with that subject is that at the beginning of the ritual, I do a series of invocation to spiritual beings, and amongst them members of the galactic brotherhood that are here on the planet, helping us out at this transition point. And like, you need to give permission to these beings in order to participate. Free will is sacred, and you have to be very, very careful about doing something without asking permission. So you need to give permission to the ascendant masters, to the spiritual brotherhood, and ascendant beings, and you have to also be very, very appreciative of the fact that you are here because of our ancestors. So you have to give thanks to all of your ancestors for being here, and this is basic to almost all shamanic rituals, I think, is like the blessings towards our ancestors. And so this extraterrestrial quality, to me, sometimes I think might be a bit confusing, because what is very, very clear is that there is an opening to levels of communication that can be manifested in many ways. One of the classic manifestations, which a lot of people confuse because of ignorance or misinterpretation, is what I call the geometries of light. These are the special effects a lot of people see, the geometry and the lights and all. You have to understand everything is light. I mean, we're all light. All energy is nothing but light. And right. So like light is communication. Anybody who knows anything about optical cables, I mean, understands perfectly fine how you can transmit information through optic fiber, and depending on the information that is being sent from one end and the receptor at the other end, that information will become coherent or not.
Right.
This is why I put so much emphasis on the stillness of the mind, of being in a state of no mind, because if you really want to receive the information that is being transmitted, and every journey has its transmission, it depends on many, many circumstances, whatever the work that has to be done, that you don't know what it is, but it's being done because of this knowingness that we're talking about. But whatever it may be, if you're in a proper harmonic resonance, and for reception of this, the more aligned you are, the more defined and the clear the geometric patterns are. It's something that it's like, there's a certain quality that you can only appreciate through the experience. It's something that's a special quality that you recognize immediately. And this is a type of communication that is a communication of the realms of the ineffable. It's a multidimensional level of communication that can very easily be interpreted as being of extraterrestrial origin, but I don't think it's from anywhere else except where you are.
So the concept of panspermia, to tie it up, is that life was seeded through spores, and the spores are easily suited to travel through space. And bacteria and viruses and all this stuff. There's life is everywhere, and DNA is a cosmic constant. It's not specific to this planet. DNA has extremely on my blog, I have a lot of very interesting information. If you put in the search box DNA, you'll come up with some very interesting information that's out there concerning the new things that are coming up about DNA. It's much more complex than what modern science is really aware of, and it's changing. And this is the important thing, that we are in a process of change that people really have no idea. I feel very strongly
that we're going through a process that everything that's happening on this planet, all this chaos in the Arab countries, in the United States, this militarization of the police and the NSA and all this madness that's going on, like Homeland Security for who,
Right.
I know, man. It's getting ridiculous, but I'm at least glad people are starting to take notice. People are actually starting to notice it now, and I'm at least glad of that.
I think it's very important that they notice it, but without reacting to fear and hate. This is something you have to be very, very careful about. You have to listen to the news from a very special perspective of like unconditional love. Don't fall into that trap. There's one of my favorite professors is someone who came with the quotation, which is, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And that was said by Yoda.
Yep.
Well, and the opposite of love is fear. So that's what you said. They can't be afraid.
You can't be afraid. Understand that it's a process. It's like a healing process in which, like the toxins are being released from the planet, like it's on its way out. I'm totally convinced. There is no room on this planet anymore for this thought form.
Right.
Are you aware of the study that was done? I'm sorry, I don't know the specific details, but it was a group of students, I believe, from a certain university that went and meditated somewhere near the White House, somewhere up in that part of the country. And they meditated, I think it was a month-long experiment. And the crime rate dropped significantly during that time frame.
Yes.
A lot of things. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I believe that totally. In India during the Kuwait War, there was a group that wanted to send 10,000 Indians from India to meditate and send waves of love to the fighting forces. Why not do it? Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, is that the answer? Is that what we should be doing here? I mean, honestly.
Absolutely. We are really, really, honestly and truly extremely powerful being, and we're very important. We're part of the cosmic process. Like we are part of creation, and we are creating. It's not that creation is out there and we're here. We're part of that process, and we're much more powerful than what we think. It's something that has to. And I believe in a global shift of consciousness. I think is what is happening. I do too. I think that's exactly what's happening. There's going to come a moment, that alpha omega singularity moment, like it's going to go crack, like a catalyst, like where.
Well, there's something called the singularity is near. Are you familiar with that?
I think pardon me?
There's a work called The Singularity is Near. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not familiar with that one, but I totally believe in that. Absolutely.
Right.
No. For me, there's just no question about it. We're in a very deep process, and we have a tendency to lose historic perspective. Like if you just look at what has happened on this planet in the last 200 years and what's happening now, it's absolutely mind-boggling. But what I think an error in the thinking of a lot of people is that they're focusing on the technological progress that's being made. But I think the true spiritual revolution is beyond technology. I mean, I think we're going when you
I believe it goes further than that. I think technology gets in the way of a lot of it.
Absolutely. But this is mind creating through his ignorance, no matter how sophisticated it is, whether you're talking about nanotechnology, stem cell research that has incredible stuff coming up with all these things. It's moving at just an incredible pace. I mean, the investigations being made with quantum computers, it's like incredible. Are you familiar with Ralph Ring and Otis T. Carr and the OTCX1?
No,
I am not.
Yeah, this was, get on my blog and check that out. It's like, this is a little flying saucer that was developed with a little element called utron, and it's controlled by mind. I mean, it's just mind controlled transportation device.
Well, I've heard of things that you can use your mind to control, but I did not know that was behind a certain element.
Well, the CIA has been behind that one for a while.
Yeah, I've got into so much of the conspiracy theory stuff now that I could talk for probably a good week about every single one of them.
Yeah. Well, it's an off subject, but I mean, talking about mind control is it's definitely spot on. Are you familiar with Barbara Honecker's expose of the Pentagon explosions?
No, but I am familiar with some work that was done in Russia and the United States on mind control experiments where they gave certain people high doses of LSD and things like that and did experiments on them, and some of them went completely crazy.
MK Ultra?
MK Ultra, yeah, absolutely.
The Pentagon stuff, that was the September 11th.
Yeah, that's the September 11th, right. No, this is something, because it's a type of mind control. It's a type of mind control where it's like, almost like mass hypnosis, you know, like I feel, I haven't been in the United States since 1968. So, I mean, like, for me, it's a completely foreign country now. But, I get the feeling there's this sort of generalized lobotomization of the country, you know, that
very much so, yes.
They're starting to come out of slumber, you know, like there's an awakening going on. And I think that's very important for things to really start happening throughout the planet.
I totally believe that we are being mind controlled en masse by this. I know that a lot of government officials own certain television organizations, and they make these programs that dumb down society. The schools are dumbing down the children. They're also programming us to be consumers, and they're getting us off on all these other tangents and arguments to keep us busy fighting amongst ourselves, so we remain in slumber of what's really going on in the big picture. But a lot of people are noticing that and coming out of it.
And we won't talk about the fluoride in the drinking water.
Oh man! Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that
and the steroid abuse and everything else. You know what that does? That actually goes in and crystallizes your pineal gland.
Exactly. Yep. That's why I mentioned it. Yeah. This is, this is why entheogens are being legalized. I mean, you really think that governments are interested in people having a mind expanding experience?
Absolutely. Then they start questioning things.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of the good old slave days in the U.S. You know, like if they could find out that a slave could read and write, I mean, you know, like what? They blind him or cut his tongue off or something horrific like that. You know, they didn't want anybody with smarts on the plantation.
We probably shouldn't mention all the underground tunnels and all the caskets that are found all around either, because that's a dark subject.
Yeah. We're getting off track here. I don't want to go down that train track because that's
that's why I said that's a dark subject. So I wanted to kind of change our path.
Deep rabbit hole. I find it fascinating. I used to post articles on that, but I quit doing it because I consider myself pretty well informed, but there's information that I really don't like to divulge except to certain people.
I agree. And there's information we really should shield ourselves from too, I believe.
Well, I think it can be, I don't want people to react in a way that, of disgust and hate and this kind of reaction. Not only that,
it's one thing to know about something, but it's another thing to dwell on it and think about it.
Exactly. You have to be very, very, you have to look at this from a really, really spiritual perspective and understand it's a process. It exists. It's not good to bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
Right.
but it's very important how you react to it.
You cannot react with violence, because violence is only going to beget more violence.
Absolutely.
There was a great scene in a movie, The Fifth Element, where they had this big ball of basically negativity is what it was, and hate and fear, and they shot a bunch of missiles at it, which is destruction, and it just grew bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, come to the dark force.
I didn't want to interrupt the flow of conversation, but you seem very cognizant, and that this is very rare, in my opinion, of the negative power and negative influence of fear, and to be able to separate that. One of my favorite quotes from Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, has been
great series.
Yeah. It was very influential on me early on, and it sort of got me on the spiritual path. One of his characters has this chant that basically says, "Fear is the mind killer. It's the little death that brings total obliteration. I will allow it to pass over me and through me, and only I will remain."
Yeah. When people have during the shamanic experience, the classic healing technique is that the substance, in my case with the mushroom, there's an inherent harmonic resonance within that plant. That is an intelligence. It's not some dumb chemical, there's an intelligence there. And so when you partake in the communion with that harmonic resonance, whatever it is that you have within you that is out of balance, any chakra, any element, which can be astral, whatever it is, anything that impedes the flow of this energy through you, the plant will go straight to it like an arrow. It'll go chuck. It's like shooting an arrow, because it's causing an obstruction and it's trying to communicate. And when it hits that barrier, then this is the process that people have to go through in order to release this energy. It's not some magic pill you take and whap and no. You need to participate. You have to be conscious of what's going on. You have to be very self-aware of what's happening. And it's the moment to deal with it. And this is where having somebody who is assisting you is important. And I've usually been able to help everyone that goes through this process by having them repeat a really, really simple mantra, which sounds like a little bit hippie, but okay. But the thing is, when you start feeling like these dark negative forces coming at you, and like you're starting to feel ill at ease, and you feel like something is trying to get you into some place that you really don't want, and there's this dark energy that starts to come on you like molasses, be aware of it. And then from the center of your heart, just say, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. And I've had more than one person say, you're absolutely right. It just went poof, just went into a cloud of smoke, just disappeared. And just
I've heard a little variation on that,
just by repeating that.
I think, and the thing they both have in common is the white light part, or the white part. I've heard a variation on that where they say, I invoke the white light of the Holy Spirit. The white light, I think, is the key, maybe.
Yes, it is, because you're bringing light to darkness. There's something there you don't want, and you're not going to get rid of it by confronting it, like it was Krishnamurti who came up, confrontation requires two parts. And so, like, if the very popular American Indian story about the little boy goes up to the medicine man, and he says, I have this big conflict in my heart. I have this black wolf battling with this white wolf, and the white wolf is all love and kindness, and the black wolf is all hatred and evil, and I don't know which one is going to win. And the medicine man says, it's very clear. The one that's going to win is the one you feed.
Absolutely.
And this is silly little story, but it's very, very true. Very true. You know, like it's whoever you feed. And so like if you have these, what you consider to be negative elements coming at you, and you have to this Aikido number of like knowing how to get out of the way and like let it go past and being aware of it and not ignoring it, but don't confront it. There's no reason to confront.
Right. It's funny you mentioned Aikido. I'm a huge fan of Aikido and was a practitioner for many years. No, I've never done that, but I appreciate the principles. Absolutely. And it's all about restoring peace where peace is absent. That's the goal. It's not about inflicting harm. Exactly. Great wisdom behind it. I don't want to interrupt the flow of conversation as you and Keith are interacting, but there's been a recurring theme that's it's been a thought in the back of my head for a long time, and what you're saying is sort of reinforcing that a lot of these psychotropic compounds, when you go on these trips and you have these experiences, it's much more of an exploration of your own inner space and your own inner psyche. And if you have trouble and there's turbulence in that inner psyche, it's going to expose that, so that hopefully, I guess the thought is that you can adjust it and become aware of it and deal with it. Would that be? Would you agree with that? It's a truth serum. You know, like there's one thing that is obvious: you can't fake real love. You can't fake it. You know, it's like real or not. But real love, it's not a mental process. It's a state of being. It's a frequency. And so the great thing about the power plants, as far as I'm concerned, and this is true with all, I like the entheogens that are like natural, that like grow from the ground rather than the synthetic substances, which I really don't even want to talk about. But there's something to it. We're dealing with consciousness. We're dealing with entities here. And so like, in order to establish a communication and allow to be informed, it's what I was talking about at the beginning, you know, and it's really important to be humble, you know, like get from, I don't know how many times I could do this and I would still have the same feeling of like if it were my first time. I'm always open. I try to impress very much on people. I am no guru. I am no teacher. I'm here as a guide, participating as someone who has a certain level of experience and like can help people when they have difficulties, as long as they are willing to trust me and the process and don't fight against it, and understand from the word go that, you know, like whatever it is, you know, I've had situations, don't get me wrong, women who may be listening to this program, but my experience is that women in particular have a very active mind, and they have a tendency to be like thinking too much and trying to understand and analyzing, and like during the process, it's the worst damn thing that you can do. Right. Don't try to understand. Just trust. And this is something a lot of people have a lot of problem with, is to trust, and to get to that trust and then surrender to it, you know, is to really allow yourself to be healed of whatever it is that may be. And then the moment you lose that trust and try to control a situation that you don't know what it is that you're controlling, this is when you're going to have problems. I couldn't agree more. And and that's exactly what happens.
Could you describe for us maybe your most profound experience with entheogens that you've had personally? The most transforming spiritually, or the most profound to you?
Well, I've had so many, but there's different levels of multidimensional realities. And when I'm talking about multidimensional realities, I'm not talking about a hierarchy of above and below and everything. Multidimensional realities all are in the same point, like Stefan was talking about in the holographic universe, like there's no up or below or sideways or whatever. It's all here now in one point. And so like multidimensional realities are just levels of consciousness. You are conscious at specific wavelengths, vibrations. And as you go through these dimensional realms, there's invisible landscapes that have a tendency to repeat themselves. They're like, the thing about shamans with a lot of experience is that they're familiar with these landscapes. It's like going trekking in the Himalayas by yourself and never being up there, and going with a Sherpa who knows every little stone on the path. Like you know where the fork of the road is going to take you to. So like there's recurrent spaces that you can get into, and in these recurrent spaces there are levels of where let me elaborate on that a little bit, because I think you might find it interesting. Is that there's a stage which is basically the preliminary stage of like transition of multidimensional realms, in which you are you familiar with 3D stereograms? For sure. These they're called magic pictures or something like that, these books that have these patterns and you can't see anything, and when you focus in a certain way, like this.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
3D
about.
book.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, those are called 3D stereograms. But, okay, let's take that one step further. It's a 2D image that when you focus in a certain way, you have an image that has this sort of quasi-holographic quality to it, in which you can look at it from different angles, and it has the illusion of depth, but you know that it's just an image on a piece of paper. Okay?
Right.
Okay. Take that one step over, and the reality that you have around you, what you call familiar reality, okay? Imagine that through a change in focus, through a state of mind, a state of consciousness, the reality around you, much like the 2D picture that turned into a 3D image, the reality around you changed into like a 4D hologram, like you're inside a hologram, right? And with the curious aspect of that, you're able to move around in it. You're not just looking at it, you are in it. It's like being immersed in that 3D stereogram, and you're walking around and you're talking and you're looking at the sky and you're looking at the ground and you're looking at the trees, but there's no separation between anything that you're looking at. Everything is filled with a very fine level of vibration, just like you could put your finger into empty space and watch the ripples go across. You following me on this?
Yeah. I think it's important to note, too, that the picture isn't changing in your analogy. Your perspective on the picture is what's changing.
Exactly.
Well, they have a helmet that you put on that I believe does that.
Yeah, well, the virtual reality scenario. Well, I don't want to get into that right now. Okay, but the thing is, what's interesting is that what is your familiar reality hasn't disappeared, right?
Right.
It's just that it's changed. Everything is more luminous. Everything has like a vibrant, live quality to it, and there's no separation. You feel this oneness. This is that oneness with nature. This is one stage of the game. But if you go further, then you get into the state of formlessness, of like beyond that, where like form simply disappears. Your so-called familiar reality disappears, and you get into a different state. But this is all done from a perspective that there is nothing muddled. It's like a crystalline clear quality. Your head is, 100% clear about what's happening, and you are where you are. You haven't disappeared from the planet. You're there, but your sense of self, your ego has dissolved. dissolving ego, I think, is like one of the most purifying experiences that you can have. And it's absolutely religious and sacred act that, I mean, it's a privilege to go through that process, because then you begin to understand yourself. I never tire of telling people, when you look in the mirror, don't confuse the driver with the car.
Yes, I say something similar all the time.
Yeah, so when you get into that space through the shamanic experience of getting to that state where you have gotten out of the car, let's say,
right,
but it's still you. You're still there. You're still consciousness, but you have to understand. When you get to a certain stage of the game and you understand the whole Maya, the illusion of matter, of density, and it's just very dense energetic forms that we interact with, but it's just nothing but space. But that's why when you're conscious of that in an experiential reality way, I mean, like, I'm not just going blah blah through logic. No. I'm talking about the kind of experience that would be experienced by somebody who had been blind in his entire life and is an expert at explaining to you the whole thing about the electromagnetic spectrum and how certain frequencies produce certain colors and this and that, and all the mechanistic aspects of what color is. But if he's never seen what a blue sky looks like, he's totally clueless of that experience. He hasn't been immersed into that experience. And this is the importance of the shamanic experience. We've lost contact with this aspect of reality. And according to many people, this is one of the big dangers of so-called modern society. Like the importance of shamanic experience in the tribe has been lost, and people in the process have become lost as well.
Yeah, we're disconnected from our roots and from a much deeper level of reality, or a much deeper perception.
And everything you can do to reconnect is welcome by you and the universe.
Well, it's welcomed by you and the universe, but it's outlawed by the government.
Unfortunately. But there's a lot of strange stories about this. I mean, I know lots of stories of shamans walking through airports like as if they were invisible. It's like just an incredible scenario with that. But yeah.
It's funny you were talking about making yourself transparent, and you're not the driver. I've said for many years, and it's in,
you are the driver, but you're not the car.
Absolutely. Sorry, I misstated that. I hit on my own perspective on that a couple of years ago, and I say to the folks that I work with, you are not your meat sack. You are not. Excuse me. You are not your meat sack.
You are not your meat sack.
So that thing you're looking at in the mirror, is not you. You're
no.
Once people really wrap their mind around that, and they understand that they are not the body, that allows them the freedom and gives them the perspective to be able to separate the two, and understand that they are the intelligence. They're not the physical presence.
This is a problem I have in particular. I deal with lots of different people, and I deal a lot of times with very beautiful women who are totally caught up in the whole glamour scenario and how they look and everything, and I have to be so ultra sensitive with them so that there's no misinterpretations of anything, like that. Right. It's so difficult to get some of these women off this trip that they're on, of like learning how to relax and just be them. If the more self-confident you are, no matter how beautiful you think you may be, and this whole business about beauty, is like a whole Hollywood trip. I mean, you're like, But no matter how beautiful you think you are, but the more self-confident you are, the less problems you're going to have with that. You know,
Yeah.
You've heard the expression, you know, to be really beautiful is like a curse sometimes, you know, like it's just because it's every time you meet a guy, you say, oh, I know what this guy's after, you know, and I live in a society which is in Spain is a very big kissy society and abrazos and everything like that. You know, everybody's very friendly, and I'm a very friendly guy, and I'm totally clear on the whole subject. But there's some women that really like I have to sort of maintain my distance so that they don't misconstrue me
Right.
trying to be nice to them and be loving, you know, from a unconditional love perspective. And the moment I notice that they look at me in a certain way, I say, bah.
Right.
Hence,
Right.
you know,
Well, society in general.
have a nice day.
Well, they're so used to that, you know, society conditions them to that's what their experience is supposed to be, and that's what they're supposed to be. And it's difficult once you've assimilated that programming to step back and realize that's, you know, what you've been told is a lie.
Yeah, it's a processing I've gone through with many women on that, and it's something that is like very difficult for them, you know, like to deal with it and to get away with, because they're so obsessed
Right.
with the car. You know, they don't understand that they're just a driver.
Well, and on the flip side too, I know a lot of men who have the same problem from a different perspective. You know, they're obsessed with their appearance from the other perspective, or
As well, of course.
Yeah, their success, you know, however they measure success.
Yes.
Whatever
Well,
they drive or their business or whatever.
My poor mother, bless her soul, you know, like I always used to say, you know, if you're so intelligent, why aren't you a millionaire?
Depends on what currency you measure that millionaire in.
Yeah, well, it's something that, you know, it's this mentality of, you know, like success is making $1 million, you know, like,
right.
You know, I know lots of people with lots of money that I wouldn't consider them to be really successful people. Because
everybody defines success in a different way.
Yes, but in our society, success is equated with money, unfortunately.
Most often. You're right.
And this is one of the big illusions of the planet, you know, like the control that money has over people is like, you know, just really sad.
You know, if they were enlightened, they would realize it's really not the money they want. It's what feeling they believe having that money will give them.
Right.
Well, this is the process they have to go through. Absolutely.
Well, he who dies with the most toys still dies. You know,
absolutely.
You don't get to take that with you.
No. We all go through the same process, and what you leave behind is what you leave behind. But what's this? Let's see, what is it that the value of one's life is measured by the memories that you leave behind, you know, and the people that loved you. This is how you are measured in when you pass away, you know, like how many hearts have you touched, you know, like what kind of memories have you left behind, and not how many toys you've left behind.
Or the memories you take with you and the experiences you take with you when you shuffle off the mortal coil.
Yeah, I'm totally in love with life. I mean, you know, like I'm totally fascinated by absolutely everything. I'm fascinated by a drop of water. I'm fascinated every time that I take a breath, you know, like it's just, but I'm very blessed, you know, I live in a beautiful place, and I have a very life that was like, I really feel was a divine gift, and a beautiful daughter, a beautiful granddaughter, and I feel very, very privileged, and I'm very grateful for this privilege. It's something that I'm very thankful.
I've heard some people go a little further than what you guys are saying and say that your life is either an example or a warning.
I like that one. I like that one.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's good. I'm going to have to write that down, get it on there.
I have a friend who will not eat at certain places because he knows the people at certain restaurants in town, and he believes the attitude and the energy of the people making his food totally affects the food and affect him because of that.
Well, I think he's a very wise man.
Absolutely.
I agree with him 100%. 100%. This is something that is very, very, very true. Absolutely. Yeah. You want to be in a place that people are really like interested in what you're eating. I mean, food in Spain is a religion, this is
right. Yeah.
This is a country where food is really taken very seriously in certain places.
Have you guys, this is sort of, we touched on this earlier, but have you all heard of the rice experiments they've been doing that's similar to the water crystallization stuff? They make a big batch of rice up, and there's no seasoning or anything like that, no additives, and they boil the whole thing, so it's all sterile. And then they put it in 3 different sterile containers, and they put different intent. One is love, one's, they leave it alone as the control, and the other one is, they put hatred or some other emotion or intent, and they let it sit there and just see what happens. And it's really miraculous to see what happens to these 3 different foods that all came from the same batch, that were all supposedly sterile, but just got given different intent. It's
I believe that 100, absolutely 100%. This is actually apropos, and you can decide if you want to leave this or not, but it's something that I think is very interesting about these people who feel they are so holy and so religious. And I've participated in many religious ceremonies, and I've prayed in Catholic church and in mosques and in Jewish synagogues. I don't care where, but I've never been a member of any particular religion because I have my particular thing about them.
Smart man.
I don't think we need to be told how to be religious. It's something, and no organization and hierarchy and rule books. I don't think I need any holy book to tell me what's holy. But
right.
Anyway, this is a very interesting story, and it's this man walking across a bridge, and he sees another one standing on the edge, ready to jump off. So he immediately runs over to him and says, "Stop, don't do that." "Why shouldn't I?" he said. "Well, there's so much to live for." "Like what?" "Well, are you religious or atheist?" He says, "Religious." "Me too." "Are you Christian or Jewish?" "Christian." "Me too." "Are you Catholic or Protestant?" "Protestant." "Me too." "Are you Episcopalian or Baptist?" "Baptist." "Wow, me too." "Are you Baptist Church of God or Baptist Church of the Lord?" "Baptist Church of the Church of God." "Me too." "Are you Original Baptist Churches of God or are you Reformed Baptist Church of God?" "Reformed Baptist Church of God." "Incredible. Me too." "Are you Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation of 1879 or Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation of 1915? He says, "Reformation of 1915. So he pushes him off the edge and yelling to him, "Die, you heretic scum."
That reminds me of Carlin's joke when he's talking about how people have killed for thousands of years on the basis of religion. And he says,
incredible. I mean, that's a mind-blowing experience.
Right. He's like, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes." "Okay, cool. Do you believe in God?" "No." Bang. The next guy, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes." "Do you believe in my God?" "No." Bang. Dead.
Yeah, and all these people killing people going, "Inshallah." You go, Paul.
Exactly. I think a spiritual journey is very unique to each person, and it's their business. They should follow what they believe.
Next time when there's one of these crazy wars, I'm expecting the God come out of the sky and he says, "Please, you guys, keep me out of this."
Exactly.
No kidding.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't get me involved. I've got nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Put my name on everything you do.
Yeah, really.
To go back to South Park, man, I just love their beautiful, sweet heresy. We're going to find out it's just some platypus up in the sky. That's the closest thing we've got to it.
I haven't heard of the great platypus in the sky theory, but it's interesting.
Yeah, growing up, I saw early on that the futility of the different religions, and I just started referring to it as the great pudding in the sky. That seems to put everybody off.
Well, I think reality is like, I don't know who came up with it, but reality is stranger than fiction, and this is really, really, really true.
Oh, absolutely.
We have no idea, and this is back to my thing about, be humble about all this stuff. It doesn't matter what you think you know. It's something that it's much through mind. I don't think we can really know, but through the shamanic experience of delving into the ineffable, it's something that you can experience. It's palpable. What you have to be careful about is trying to analyze it. This is where you fall back into the trap.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Years ago, it occurred to me that really everybody stretches for what's the purpose, what's the meaning of life. The only real purpose, the only meaning that makes sense for us and for everybody else is that you're supposed to learn and you're supposed to grow. As long as you're doing that and you're not hurting anybody else in the process, you're fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah, and to be the eternal student, how many of these famous professors who think they know it all and have PhDs and Nobel Prizes and have this attitude that there's something special about them. Be humble.
Right.
It doesn't. There's this this academic arrogance, and there's this spiritual snobbery in particular that I think one has to be aware of. There's how many people that because they go to church and they think that they believe in God makes them special.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep an open mind and always question things too, because you can't harm a belief by questioning it, because you're either going to justify having that belief or you're going to say, okay, perhaps it's time to re-examine that belief and maybe change it.
Yeah. I was picked when I was in the States, and I was hitchhiking with a friend of mine once, and this strange guy picked us up, and he was very silent. He was there in the car with one of those little plastic Jesuses on the dashboard, and I thought, I don't know what we got into. The guy finally breaks the question. He says, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm sorry, I don't." And he stops the car and makes us get out of the car.
Really?
Yeah, I thought, well, this.
Well, was it a bobblehead?
This is a real Christian here, oh, you don't believe in Jesus Christ? Well, jump off the bridge,
That's crazy. You would think he would have tried to convert you or something,
Yeah. Well, now for many years now, I'm always dressed in white. It's my favorite color. I'm dressed in white all the time. A lot of people confuse me for being a doctor or something like that, but I had a period where I was always in black. I had like a black shirt, black pants, and I had a black coat and a black hat. And I was in Copenhagen one day on a bus, and this very nice lady starts talking to me. She's really friendly, and I had my long hair back then too, and she's saying, you're new in town? Yeah, I'm new. And I says, my husband, he's a rabbi. Would you like to come to our house and have dinner with us one evening? And I said, oh, well, that's very sweet of you. I would like it very much, but I could see where it was going, and I looked at her and I said, but I need to let you know that I'm not a rabbi, And she gives me this really weird look, and it says, oh, I'm sorry. And I said, yeah, but look, I'll still go to dinner if you want.
Might should have waited till after dinner to tell him that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and these are these holy roller Christian, That was an experience when I lived in San Francisco. I went to one of these holy rollers, when these, I don't know if they still have those around, where they're singing and usually it's black people and they're like rolling around the aisles and like really in ecstasies,
They've still got the ones that handle the snakes and all that.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing in Texas, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. No, this was another one. There's a church and it was like they were just singing like mad and like rolling around the aisles and everything. It was just really great. But I mean, sure, it was ecstatic experience for them. It was experience instead of like belief. I sort of felt there was something to it, but I didn't become a member of that church.
I think it has value for them. I really do.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I'm sensitive to a lot of those energies and sort of borderline medium. In my youth, I used to jump around from church to church to church, and it was always those kind of churches that I found the most interesting and the most entertaining, because the energy that was shooting around in the room and going through the people was just spectacular, as opposed to some of the churches that I grew up with like Southern Baptist and stuff like that.
I was going to say, are you Reformed Baptist Church of God from the Reformation of 1879 or 1915? Before we carry on with this conversation.
Right. It was strict Southern Baptist when I first started, and I was just like, man, this is just not the place for me. It's like going to a funeral. So I started jumping to different churches, and it was those evangelical churches that, especially the Pentecostal churches, man, you feel the Spirit, you see the Spirit flowing in those places, and it's incredible.
Well, they believe, and they have that energy that comes through them, and I think all these things are valid. What is important for any religion, and this is the success of the Santo Daime Church. I have to say one thing about them, that as far as religion is concerned, each ceremony begins with like a short introduction, a little prayer.
Right.
And everybody starts lining up and starts taking ayahuasca straight off. This is how it starts. There's no bullshit. There's no, like take your ayahuasca, get in line, start dancing and start singing. But it's a real sacrament. So, I mean, it's not some placebo that's being given to you in your mouth and having some guy who's doing naughty things with the choir boys telling you, like, believe.
It's very straightforward then.
Right.
There's a strangeness to those type of religions that I think it's more than just faith. It's the experience, the religious experience that is really important. And there are exceptions in Catholicism. There's mystics who have had a very interesting religious experience based on faith, and I think they're rare, but they do exist.
Yeah, I agree. There's sort of two orders of magnitude for religions. There's the modern day incarnation of religion, which is really designed more for controlling people. And there are a few religions that are organized enough to be considered a religion, but their roots are still deep in spiritual exploration. They don't dictate. They're not dogmatic. They're just open enough to allow for that spiritual exploration. And that's important.
Which religion is that? I'm not familiar with it.
Well, I made up my own, and
good for you.
It's really more about the people who are a part of religion and the leadership. There's a couple of New Vine churches in my area that are very open-minded. They stick to the classic Christian dogma, but they don't have a sense of judgment. They seem to be missing that sense that if you don't believe exactly what I believe, you're going to hell. That's been thrown out.
Yeah. This is ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. That's very rare these days, but it's so important.
Yeah.
So
no, I know it's there's these strange things, like if you piss in the direction of Mecca, that you're going to go to hell business is something that.
Right.
Well, it's like even some of them, they've been ridiculous things like people will joke about it and say, well, there's just one thing you got to do on the third Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. if there's a clear sky, and there's all these little weird hoops that they've made up to jump through.
Fish on Friday.
It's control. Yeah. It's a control mechanism that.
Yep.
Right.
That I feel it fails because it doesn't. If it worked and gave you the experience, I'd say go for it. But I don't know of any cases where it does.
Well, those same control mechanisms are really starting to fall apart to a large degree. I mean, you see it in
totally
in the reform of the Catholic Church and the new Pope.
Yeah. Well,
they've been losing subscribers. The Catholic Church has really been going down in popularity because they're holding on to those.
If they started dishing out mushrooms, you'd see the Vatican.
There you go. That's the solution there, and politicians as well.
Oh, could you imagine if politicians were on mushrooms?
No, they're on very dangerous drugs. Is the problem with those guys?
Right.
But it's what they need. It's like. So many people have had such enlightening experience with entheogens that it should be commonplace. It should be controlled to the extent that it should be like in every neighborhood, as far as I'm concerned.
It should be available to everyone if they so desire and ready for it.
Yeah, I mean it's like anything. Like you have to know what you're doing. This is why it's.
Well, and that's what's killing people is that it's not available to them. So they go out and they get the wrong thing or something like that, or they don't know how much they're taking or what they're doing. So there's nobody there to guide them, and that's where the real dangers come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I live in a place which is that's one subject I didn't get into, and that is the role of discotheques. Of disco music as the new wave of shamanism. It's like for me the disco scene has so many shamanic elements that I really appreciate it, and I can't say that I'm a disco guy, but I don't know if you know, but I live in a place that is world famous for being the party island on the planet. It's like has the biggest and best discos in the world, and I actually like to participate in them because it reminds me so much of shamanic rituals, where shamanic rituals have a lot to do with physical exhaustion, like staying up all night long and dancing your ass off, and like enjoying yourself. And there's something about the power of a DJ controlling like thousands of people, where they're all like dancing to the same beat and like having a good time. The only thing is a lot of the young kids like abuse this situation, and what kills a lot of the young kids are these wicked cocktails, like they take ecstasies, a couple of whiskeys, and then some ketamine, and then like a quaalude.
Yeah, a lot of them do something called candy flipping, where they'll take LSD and ecstasy at the same time.
Yeah. This is insane. This is like irresponsible, and so like this is something that should be controlled as far as I'm concerned. Like I think not necessarily a disco. There's one very interesting guy that I don't know if you're familiar with in Brazil. He's very famous, Carioca. Have you ever heard of Carioca?
No, but I'm not very familiar with the disco or the rave scene.
He has nothing to do with disco. Carioca has been around now for some time, and he's a superb musician, and he surrounds himself with international musicians that are like like really outstanding. And they take ayahuasca. It's a shamanic journey with musicians. Yeah. Fantastic experience. And he travels around a bit, but I participated in one of his scenarios, like I think about 2 years ago it was, and I was really impressed. I mean, the music, it's just, you're not so much dancing, some dancing, but mostly sitting down, listening to music, beautiful songs of love and everything like that. Taking ayahuasca as you're listening to it, but the power of music cannot be underestimated. You know, it's like really, really, really powerful. Really
Absolutely,
powerful.
It's vibration incarnate in our
It's
dimension.
you know, everybody is in harmony, and like the entheogens are like communicators. They open up levels of communication, and when everybody is in the right frequency, you know, like things start happening, and it's a beautiful experience. Strongly recommend Carioca. Good guy.
Well, if you get everybody going in the right frequency and you get a few people going, other people will catch on to that because it's very contagious, just like a tuning fork.
That's called harmonic resonance. That's
exactly.
Harmonic resonance. You know, you get on a piano and you hit one key and you keep hitting it and keep hitting it, and the other keys start vibrating some harmonics to that key that you're hitting, and
yeah.
This is what we're doing as human beings. You know, we're setting up these signals that, you know, like if you're there's one thing which we haven't touched upon, but it's important not to leave it out. It is that concerning harmonic resonance and alignment, there is something that for me is indisputable. It's something that you may understand it, not understand it, but you can't dispute that it exists, and that's truth. Whatever it is, however you define it, this is another subject, but there is something that is called divine truth. It is what it is. You know, we are where we are. Everything is happening in divine perfection, although we may have difficulty understanding that, but there's an order, there's a cosmic order, and that cosmic order is of a supreme consciousness of which we are fractal aspects of. And everything that you do, no matter what it is, that is in alignment with this truth, which is in harmonic resonance with that truth, will produce changes not only in you, but everything around you, because of the laws of harmonic resonance and because of the laws of magnetic attraction. Once you are aligned in this frequency, as if magic, through miracles, you begin to automatically attract the energies that you are in resonance with towards you, and things start to happen in your life, and things start to happen with the people that are around you and that you are in contact with and love.
And what is the best way for people to get into this this frequency and start this process?
It's a state of, you don't need to take absolutely anything. I don't believe the shamanic path is for everyone. In fact, quite to the contrary, I think it is definitely not indicated for certain people. But whatever it is, whether it's being on the mountaintop looking at the view and being in a state of no mind and contemplation, whether it's through yoga, through pranayama, breathing exercises, or floating in a dark tank, whatever it is that can still your mind, that can get you to that state of no mind, that 0 point where you let go of your ego, you let go of your desires, and you just be, and just do that. And
so even meditation can get you
just
there.
Just meditation. The only thing is with entheogens, it's an accelerated process, you know,
right.
Like it's like my Tai Chi friend, you know, like in one session he was able to accomplish what his professor was not able to accomplish until after 30 years of daily practice, you know, and that's to become one with form. You're losing consciousness of your ego and getting into a state of total consciousness and beingness. This is easy words to say, but very difficult to put into practice.
Absolutely. Well, until you're able to step outside of yourself. Once you learn that skill of being able to step outside of yourself and attain no mind, it becomes relatively easy, but that in itself is rather difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's self-awareness. Self-awareness is what we all being attentive to details. Like I put a lot of emphasis into when during the process of like listen to your breathing, listen to the wind, and feel the ground underneath you, and feel the connection with the planet and with the sky above, and but not through any kind of mental process, just being aware of it, just being sensitive. It's life is very much like a perfume, like it's a presence that you can't put your finger exactly where it is, but it fills you, like it's the fragrance enters you.
Right.
And let me just say one thing, because it's a problem a lot of people have, is that what we forget a lot of times is, what is this body? This body is a vehicle of expression for our consciousness. It's a vehicle of, we are all, without exception, we are all spiritual beings here on this planet to have a human experience. And we are necessary for the benefit of this planet, because we have special energies that come through us, which are part of the process of the ascension of ourselves and of this planet. And so, you need to be as focused as possible on this point of understanding that the entire body is a conscious being, in which, if you understand how anything about physics, and you understand this whole business about the electromagnetic spectrum and everything, that how the body is constantly filtering all these energies. We're in a sea of consciousness, and a sea of energy, and that energy is light. And our body is filtering, and we smell, or we see, or we taste, but these are all filters, because all those little sensations are all parts of the energy that surround us. So what happens, this is the importance behind some of the shamanic experiences. So it's the point I want to get to, is so what happens when you let go of all this, like you enter into a realm that you believe is like outside of you, but it's not outside of you. It's very much, it's more like inside. I'm a big fan of Dan Winter and his concept of implosion and recursive fractal energies. This is something that I work with very much during the shamanic rituals. It's like it's centering, it's implosion, centering. Like, think of yourself as having this very fine laser beam light going just right through you, and center on that. But the focal point of that is your heart, which is the center of your being. Rituals, most shamanic rituals usually begin with the blessing of the 7 directions. Are you familiar with that?
I am, yeah. I'm not sure how Keith is.
Yeah, the blessing of the 7 directions is, for me, the focal point. It's what I point out is the most important thing to be aware of, and it's right at the very beginning of the ritual. Is like when you give your blessings to the 4 cardinal directions, like north, south, west, east, and then you send your blessings and your gratitude from all the energies coming from the center of the planet, and all the energies coming from the cosmos to you. And that focal point of those is the center of your heart. So, think of yourself as this, of your heart.
I got it.
Yeah, so the center of your heart is like that center point, like if you were a sphere. So, you're radiating energy. We're in a field of energy. You're radiating energy from that center point. And if you keep your focus there, this is instead of in your head is what I'm getting at. Your whole body is a brain. Like we're full of millions and millions of like nerve endings throughout our body are like out there as little sensors, but we have a tendency to think it's all in our head. And that's because we're keeping it there. You need to have this alignment between your head and your heart. That if you don't have that, how many people are all so loving and so sweet and, like, oh, I'm so full of love and completely out of it, like brain dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some people who are very intellectual and blah, 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 but, they're not connected to their heart. You have to have this balance. It's a balancing act. It's my father was a doctor, old time, real honest to goodness doctor. And he said the secret to health is what's called homeostasis. It's the balancing act of the body, of like all the enzymes, the chemicals, and that whole balancing act the body has to go through in order to maintain itself in equilibrium.
Right.
And this is how it is. This is true. It's spiritual homeostasis that we have to be going through, but not from an intellectual perspective, from an experiential plane of reality.
Well, something you mentioned earlier, I know a man who does a mantra that says, all I need is within me now.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Quite right. I agree.
So what exactly do you mean by experiential dimension?
No, experiential reality is like somebody who's lived in the desert all his life, and you take him to some place that there's an ocean with water as far as you can see, and you get the guy and you dip him in the water, and it's the first time he's been in water. This is an experiential reality.
Gotcha. So
and like you can't talk about something that it really cracks me up, these experts talking about, don't drink ayahuasca, you're going to go insane, like, oh, this is going to really screw up your brain, it might screw up yours, but talk for yourself.
Yeah,
I'm amazed at how little the so-called experts really know.
Well, without trying it, it's like a nun talking to you about sex.
True that. Okay, so we're pulling up on 3 hours here. I actually need to go. We've got some stuff to take care of. Okay. But Miguel, I really tremendously want to thank you for joining us. This has really been one of my favorites.
Thank you, and I really from the depth of my heart, I really congratulate you for doing something that is very much in need, and it's happening on the planet now, and that's to be a way shower. And a way shower is somebody who is participating at some spiritual level of putting people in contact with different levels of awareness, and the fact that you are called higher conscious radio, I think is a clear alignment that will attract the necessary energies towards you. And I wish you nothing but the very best, my friend.
So that concludes our discussion for this evening. If you or someone you know is someone we should talk to, someone we should help get the word out about, please feel free to contact us at hcradio1@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.